welcome to the MacIver Report. It is June 13th, 2025. I'm Bill Osmolsky, the Content Director for the MacIver Institute, and I'm joined by my colleague,
Mike Lucas, Policy Analyst, Chief Economist.
Great to have you with us again, Mike. You and me as always. So, busy week. We were just talking about all the stuff that happened this week, and it turned out there were only two really big things that just seemed to spawn a ton of news stories and a ton of coverage. So, first is the state budget, and the other one are the riots that are supposedly coming this weekend. So, let's start things off with the state budget. The Budget Committee met on Tuesday and Thursday this week. They still got a few more things to go, but they're actually coming along. They're actually progressing pretty well. Their goal is to get the budget done by June 30th because the next fiscal year starts on July 1st, and they might get pretty close to hitting that goal. So currently, this is where spending's at. So let's see. Last night they knocked out DADCAP, Workforce Development, Veterans Affairs, Tech Colleges, Public Instruction, and Shared Revenue, and tax cuts. I mean, they got through a lot last night. I think it was Safety Services, Medical College, Environmental Improvement Program. Some of those things were from earlier this week. So far, GPR again at the top, that's actual taxpayer money, state taxpayer money. All funds is everything. So that's program revenue, that's federal funds, everything. So right now we're at, they've increased all fund spending by about $2.5 billion. That includes borrowing. So there's still a bit of borrowing in this budget. But, I've been saying that every budget is bigger than the last budget by about 3 to 11%. And I've been kind of saying I think this one's going to be 10% higher. I think they're going to, Governor Evers wanted a $120 billion budget. The current budget is $100 billion. It's going to, they're probably going to land about 110. I don't think they're going to do that anymore. They're really surprised. The Republicans on joint finance are really surprising me. They're really holding the line on spending. So,
cool.
Yeah. So gotta give credit where credit is due. So, big thing last night was tax cuts, and the way they did it was they modified the brackets. So they didn't change the rates at all, but they just changed who qualifies for what. So these are the current brackets for married and single people in Wisconsin, and this is how they plan to adjust that. So that's what it's going to mean for reduced revenue for the state for each year. So about $320 million less in revenue. Don't worry, they're making that up in other ways.
Yeah.
And then the other big thing they did was retirement income. So here in Wisconsin, we tax retirement income. Not every state does, So like I've even over the years I've heard of people moving to Illinois because they wanted to stay in the Midwest, but Illinois didn't tax retirement income. So what Wisconsin's doing to kind of, start to move in that direction is they're creating a retirement income standard tax deduction of $24,000. I'm assuming that's on top of the already $24,000 tax deduction. So got to look into that one a little bit more, but at least, it's a step in the right direction. And here's the thing is, they're Republicans' play right now is they're trying to make the budget as veto-proof as possible. These are two things. I mean, they wanted, obviously, a much broader tax cut than just, $320 million a year. But they also knew that Governor Evers would veto all that stuff. By giving him, by kind of helping out the middle class here, Evers, it's going to be really dangerous for Evers to veto that, helping out retired people, helping out the middle class, the lower middle class. I mean, it would not be a smart move on Evers' part. The only way he could get away with it is, I'm always complaining how Republicans are terrible on messaging. That is the only way that he'd be able to get away with vetoing that, is if Republicans weren't on the ball when it came to communicating what he was doing.
Yeah.
So, other big things. So DPI, this is always the big fight. Every budget cycle, we're always doing, DPI is always a big problem. So what we've got here is special education. This is a big fight because Democrats started parading all these kids in front of their press conference and parents talking about how hard it is to educate a special needs kid. First of all, so this is the base. That's what we currently spend per year on special education, what the state spends on special education reimbursement. So that's what the state sends to school districts to help. Republicans plan on increasing that to $650 million for next year, and then $720 million the year after that. The big talking point on this is always the reimbursement rate. So for every dollar that a school district spends to educate a kid with special needs, how much of that is the state, reimbursing them for?
Yeah.
So we're increasing that to the highest level ever in state history. So that's going to be 35% next year. So that's 35 cents on the dollar, then 37.5 the year after that. So, moving up there, not fast enough for Democrats though. They want 60% from the state. Now, there's Mike, you and I've talked about just how generous school districts are when it comes to diagnosing kids with special needs.
Yes.
So before we end that discussion, just look at the top of the screen real quick. You see that there are 130,000 students in the state that are special needs. There's 800,000 students in the state. So that's 16%.
Yep.
That's 1 out of every 6 kids is special needs,
Yes.
supposedly. So do you want to start or should I?
Go ahead and start because there's something I want to pull up here.
Okay. So, I was talking to a staffer in the building, and they said, I understand it's tough. Those school districts, when a kid is diagnosed with special needs, that they get an individual performance improvement plan or whatever it's called, IEP. And the school district has to follow that. They're required by law to follow that plan.
Yes.
And I pointed out, here's the thing, though. The school districts diagnose the kids with special needs or not.
Yeah. So
they do that knowing that they get extra funding for those kids.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing with special needs is it is very, it can get very subjective and very abstract, and things that most people would never consider to be special needs, a school district can consider to be special needs and get a little bit extra funds from the state. So this is really just in a lot of cases, this is a scam. I had a friend recently who has their kid in the Madison Public Schools, and he was really upset at the school district. And he was telling me about this vetting, how they diagnosed his kid with a special need. It's not even a real condition. They made up the condition so that they could categorize him as special needs and get a little extra funding, and it really ticked him off. So those types of games are happening all over. And then I would, I'm just going to run into the next slide real quick, Mike, to kind of, add one more point to this. So the Joint Committee on Finance also increased reimbursements for high-cost special education. Now, this is what most people think when they think of special education. These are the kids that cost more than $30,000 a year in personal instruction per year because they're actually disabled. And in those cases, the state reimburses school districts 90%. So the kids that are actually special needs, not just, labeled special needs, the state's taking care of those kids. Yeah. It's all the other kids that the school district's trying to pull their scams on that, the state is still giving them a lot of money, a lot more than I think they should, not as much as Democrats want, though.
Yeah. So,
Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, so this isn't exactly the thing that I wanted to pull up, but it at least gives you an idea. So NCES, they have a page on their website that, gives you a little bit more of a breakdown on those 16% of kids that are, classified as having a specific learning disability, SLD. Mm-hmm. So this is nationwide, but, it's a large population, so it's pretty much going to be the same for Wisconsin. So what do we have? So here are the people that if you are special needs, you're actually special needs, right? So autism, developmental delay, potentially, intellectual disability, that can be a little hazy, but like these are your kids who are nonverbal autistic, who are Down syndrome, like people who really need help, mm-hmm. who cannot survive essentially on their own, right? Who need a lot of help. Of the 15% of students that have learning disabilities, 13% are autistic, 7% have a developmental delay, and then 6% have an intellectual disability. 32% have a specific learning disability that is not in any of those categories. Okay, 19% have a speech or language impairment. Okay, anyone with a lisp, anyone with a stutter, anyone who maybe the special ed department deems as not being a good speaker, speaks slowly, mispronounces words because maybe they're a foreigner. Okay, I had students whose parents were immigrants. They were born in the U.S., but obviously they're raised in a Cuban household, and their parents, English isn't their parents' first language. So it was a hard, thing for them to learn and understand English. They were special needs. Yeah. Right? They had a language impairment. Okay? So my school got special education funding for that student, right? Who, in my opinion, was fluent in English, but if you dropped a word that was maybe a little high level, he's obviously not going to know what that's going to mean.
There were some vocabulary words that he was still learning as he was going through school, huh?
Right. Yeah. And then understand that hearing impairment is included in this. Emotional disturbance is included as a learning disability, and so on. So somewhere else, I came across the prevalence of what typically is descriptive of a special education student. That's ADD, ADHD, right? Mm-hmm. Anyone who has who's hyperactive or who has an attention deficit or some combination of those two things. I think the rate of prevalence in Wisconsin for that is about 10%. 10% of all public school students are diagnosed with ADD or ADHD.
Yeah, oh wow. So
this is the most insidious, learning disability that's psychiatry, categorizes because it's so prevalently diagnosed. So you're talking about 10%, 80,000 kids.
Almost like children naturally have trouble focusing on one thing and sitting in their chair for 8 hours a day.
Yeah, almost like the traditional, schooling system is not optimal for learning, right? Or almost as if, your teachers suck, right? Yeah. And they're not interested in what you're talking about. So I pulled up the DSM-5. This is published by the American Psychiatric Association, the APA, not to be confused with the American Psychological Association, the other APA.
Oh, my gosh.
The American Psychiatric Association publishes the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Psychiatric Disorders. The current edition is the DSM-5. And in this manual, it's very long. It's 1,400 pages. Okay, I have a copy of it. Here's the diagnostic, criteria for ADHD. It gets a little complicated when you're talking about is it ADD or ADHD. Let's just try to focus on just ADD. But essentially what it amounts to, if you're going to diagnose a kid with ADD, is their answers to a questionnaire. Literally, their answers to a questionnaire. Okay? So, oh gosh, here's a couple. So, often fails to give close attention to details or makes careless mistakes. Number 2, has difficulty sustaining attention in tasks. Number 3, often does not seem to listen when spoken to directly. Often does not follow through on instructions and fails to finish schoolwork. Often has difficulty organizing tasks and activities. Often avoids, dislikes, or is reluctant to engage in tasks. Often loses things necessary for tasks or activities.
All right, so hang on real quick. So, how do they... we get the idea of all right, that's what an ADHD kid is. What kind of special services do you provide to that kid other than the teacher just, kind of accounting for that in normal classroom instruction?
Yes. Okay. So if you have ADD, right, you could have a diagnosis, right, from a child psychiatrist or psychiatrist, right, puts you as classifies you as AD, ADHD, whatever. You do not have to receive either of these things as a consequence of that. The overwhelming majority of kids with these diagnoses do have this. They have a 504 or they have an IEP. An IEP is an individualized education plan. If a student has this, it is not necessarily indicative of the fact that they have some psychiatric or learning disability. Kids who have gifted status also have IEPs, but 504s are for kids with learning disabilities. So an ADD kid diagnosed by a psychiatrist then goes to the school district awards them with a 504 plan. The 504 plan basically requires teachers, instructors, to deliver a certain number of accommodations to these students. The first is time and a half. Time and a half means that students get 50% additional time for tests. Okay? In some cases, I was telling you about this, a student can also get time and a half for take-home assignments.
Yeah.
So they get an extra day for a homework assignment if the assignment is, due the next day, something like that. Another thing is they get preferential seating. Preferential seating can be decided by the teacher. You put the ADD kid in the front row, or maybe you put them in the back row. It depends. You can ask the kid. The kid says where they want to sit, where they focus better. If they don't write and they're lying to you, which they are, right, because they want to sit next to their friend or something like that, you just place them wherever you want. They also get explicit instruction on tests and assignments, and on tests and assignments. So you as a teacher have to go around to the kids with this accommodation and explain to them what the question means, right? Explain to them what the answers mean, the options, right?
Okay.
So you have to give them preferential treatment in this regard.
All right.
And a bunch of other things. It depends. There's a whole long list of accommodations that, the school district can decide to award to a student with a 504, and they can apply later for other accommodations if they want, but those are the main ones.
All right. So you as a teacher, you don't get extra money for any of that. Putting the kid in the front of the class or the back of the class, makes no difference. I mean, you get paid the same amount no matter what. So how does that get, in your experience, how does that get translated, or at least your theory, how does that get translated into billable hours for state reimbursement funds? How do you, figure out how to get 30% more out of your state government because of this?
So I as a teacher, as a general education teacher, right? So, I taught middle school, so I taught one class to the entire class, right? When I was in high school, I taught one class to the entire class, grade level, to be clear. I do 90% of the work. I do 99% of the work, right? Because those kids with 504s are spending 99% of their time in general education classes. It's the 1% of the time that they are spending with the speech pathologist, with the behavioral psychology specialist, right? With, the people who are actually in the special education department. Okay. Those people probably work 5 hours a week on average. Most of them sit around and do nothing, because if they're going to get this additional instruction in order to, put them on level with the other students who do not have these accommodations, who don't have learning disabilities, you can't pull them out of their classes where they're receiving the crucial direct instruction, right?
Yeah.
And then, have them do something. And you can't keep them after school either for extracurriculars. So you end up, and you can't take them at lunch, and you can't take them at break. So when the heck are they going to pull these kids out in order to give them, special instruction, additional instruction in math or reading or whatever area, they're trying to address? Those people are the ones who benefit from the special education funding, not me.
I see.
I receive no additional compensation for the number of students that I have in my classes with 504s.
Got it. So so the 30% is helping pay for the speech therapist and the meditation
and for the school psychologist, right?
Yeah.
Who is not a psychologist, who has a master's, right? Who has a bachelor's with some supplemental training certificate after that, right? These people are getting $90,000 a year, and I'm on the public pay scale as a teacher, actually delivering on these accommodations to students. And most of the kids with these accommodations don't need them. The parents understand that it's really easy to get a 504. Just consult with a child psychiatrist who will prescribe your kid Ritalin or Adderall. They're happy to have your patronage because
Yeah, well, that,
you
and
pay them money and they're going to give you the diagnosis that you want. Psychiatry is disgusting. In
well,
this
and
way.
it shows you a different mentality too. Like my friend was upset that the school district is saying your kid is special needs. Most parents, oh, I didn't hear the second part. My kid's special.
Oh yeah, but and parents, a lot of them know exactly what's going on. Okay, they know that there's nothing wrong with their kid. What they want is they want their kid to have speed and they want their kid to have extra time on assignments. Okay, they want them to be treated more leniently by their teachers to boost their grades.
Yeah.
Because it's not about getting a high school diploma anymore. It's about sending your kid off to college because high school doesn't mean anything anymore because everyone has a college degree.
And you got to go to college to get a high school education now.
Yeah, so parents, a lot of them are complicit in this arrangement. They know what they're doing. They're feeding their kids, psychoactive drugs in order to hopefully, boost their kids' grades. And psychiatrists know this very well. Very well.
Yeah.
They're part of it.
Yeah.
So are the pill pushers. So
Yeah.
are the pharmaceuticals.
So yeah, this is a societal level problem that you're not going to fix in the state budget, but
Yeah, but it really doesn't help when you have special education departments who are acting as if they are psychiatrists saying, Johnny's really struggling in class. Our teachers have told us that they've really taken a lot of extra steps in order to bring him up to speed with the rest of the class, but he's just not improving. I think you should get him checked out, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. Right? And parents are like, oh my gosh, this would explain everything as to why Johnny's not doing well in class, right? He's not stupid. He isn't lazy, right? He isn't disinterested in school. He's sick.
yeah.
He's sick, Bill.
Or
Right? He's wired differently. He has a neurochemical imbalance, which is a bogus theory long since discredited in psychiatry.
I'm going to go out on a limb here too, and I'm going to suggest that perhaps some of these conversations involve maybe Johnny is actually a Joni.
Oh, yeah. Doesn't feel comfortable in his skin. So, of course, with the political environment, which, of course, high schoolers and middle schools are incredibly attuned to, he doesn't feel safe in this learning environment. Almost exclusively, inhabited by far left-wing teachers and administrators. Makes no sense, Bill.
Yeah, that's long story short, don't send your kids to government schools.
No. And keep them away from psychiatrists, because psychiatrists will ruin them. They will destroy them physically.
All right.
Remember this,
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
Bill. Remember,
All
the
right, I'll let you
psychiatrist
go.
made up gender dysphoria as well.
Yeah. So them and the lawyers have ruined society.
Yes.
All right, so here's the next thing we got to talk about. Tony's tax hike. So starting next year, which means that in December, your bill is going to come out. You're going to have a higher property tax bill this year. Property taxes across the state, like I believe the state, property taxes are like at $11.3 billion around the state total. Governor Evers' veto that he pulled last budget is going to increase that by $250 million every year on top of it. So it's going to be $250 billion more next year, $250 billion more on top of that the year after that, for the next 400 years. This is why this is happening. It's all because of his light item veto, where he increased the revenue limits for school districts by $325 per pupil per year for the next 400 years. So this is where it comes from. This is all on Tony Evers, and I'll tell you, like, Tony Evers was, let's put that down there. So, all right, so that's what it's going to come out to. Tony Evers was counting on Republicans covering this up for him. He was really thinking that the Republicans are just going to, allocate more funds to keep property taxes down so that, they could cover up Tony Evers' tracks. They didn't do that. They're playing hardball. They're making him own this. So good for them, and, now they need to really get out there and say, hey, your property tax bill, I went up this year. This is the guy that did it. Remember the line item veto? This is why your bill is higher.
Yeah. And on a per student basis, at the end of the 400 years, this $325 increase every single year amounts to an additional $120,000 per student.
Oh, okay.
At the end of the 400
wow.
years, right? So right now they get like what, 30,000? It depends on the school, but they get like
all right, so
20 to 30,000 per student.
All right, this gets really complicated because there's several different funding sources for students. So like school districts, they know they'll cherry pick what numbers they're looking at when they're trying to sell a referendum. Mm-hmm. So like they'll say,
yeah.
So like for example, I think like the average is probably like $12,000 per student revenue limits.
Right.
So
for property.
Yeah. So when
tax.
so when you count
property
taxes plus general school aids.
Yep.
That amounts to about $12,000 per pupil. Now there's all kinds of other things that don't count into that. So like there's tons of what they call categorical aids, which it's an enormous category, billions and billions of dollars. That doesn't get counted in those $12,000.
Yeah.
All the money that the school districts get from the federal government doesn't count in that revenue. So when you start adding this stuff up, you start getting to like $18,000, $20,000 per year per student. And there's some districts where you add this all up, and I mean it is obscene. Like $50,000 per pupil per year. Yeah. So I mean, it really depends. You got to look at got to look at this whole thing in total. This is a great opportunity though to explain. Yeah, so your revenue limits, those do not count federal aid. So like if the Trump administration, it's great to see Republicans in Wisconsin playing hardball. If the Trump administration really wants to play hardball and they start cutting off school districts who are continuing to fly the LGBT flag throughout June. They cut off that federal funding to schools. That has zero impact on your property taxes.
Yeah.
The school district has to go to referendum and convince you to raise your property taxes to make up that difference.
Yeah.
So, play this game. You right now, the liberals are losing.
Yeah.
Your property taxes are going up. You voted for Tony Evers, so here you go. And Tony Evers is the reason why your property taxes are going up. So don't forget that.
And I was trying to find it. I have it saved on a different computer, but the DPI actually has a little dashboard with comparative revenue, right? Which is total revenue that the different school districts receive. I couldn't find it, but you can go in there and you can just select your school and see how much total revenue they get from all funds, all sources.
Yeah, so I did it was called On the Ballot, Fact Check Your School District.
That's right.
Yeah, so if you go to that story, the link is in there. But yeah, DPI's website is really hard to navigate. There's a lot of dead ends and things. Yeah, so that link is right on that story, On the Ballot, Fact Check Your School District.
I literally just typed into their website comparative revenue, per member. And there's no link to the dashboard. It's just all the PDFs and Excel sheets.
Even when you go to like the dashboards, like you'll find things like, oh, here's the financial dashboard. It's just all the FAQ files. It's like, okay, where's the button I click to actually see the dashboard? So that's why you need to come to MacIverInstitute.com because we like to post that stuff. All right, completely changing gears. We got to talk about this. Riot news, L.A., the Battle of L.A.
Oh, yeah.
So, a big immigration riot, depending on how you interpret it, it was a peaceful protest, or it was a riot, or it was an insurrection, or it was a full-fledged invasion, because you got the president of Mexico now who is encouraging all of this, so...
Yeah. Freaking
and obviously
cartel crony.
Yeah, and obviously they aren't waving American flags, so kind of lends that whole optics of it being an invasion. So I kind of lean in that direction.
There's a great video that was like trending on Twitter that I saw of Cat Williams, the comedian. He's a guy who talks like this. Yeah. Right. He is a great clip of him, going after some guy who's Mexican or Mexican descent or whatever, and he just rails against him. He's like, "This ain't Mexico, this is America." It's just a great rah rah.
Is there a good punchline, or is it just?
No, it's just him,
just
screaming at this guy, saying America's awesome.
Oh, okay. All right, so reaction. So President Trump called out the National Guard because Gavin Newsom refused to. So, I mean, that's what the National Guard is for, to restore order. And so Governor Evers, he joined all of his Democrat colleagues to say this was wrong. Trump shouldn't have called out the National Guard. He's the reason why this problem is escalating, not because rioters are attacking police officers and laying siege to federal buildings.
Yeah. Bill, I'm torn on this because this is just, I don't like the president, being a king.
Yeah.
I do not like the National Guard is nationalized.
Yeah.
I like the National Guard when it was a state militia.
So,
But I guess it's like you get your comeuppance, you turn your president into a king and you reap what you sow. No one else complained when, any previous president, mobilized National Guard or the Marines for that matter on American soil. So,
so I mean, like,
what do you expect?
Yeah, I mean, like, we've seen the pictures of, like, the civil rights movement, nationalizing the National Guard and sending in active duty military. And,
right.
and, right or wrong, it was over a public policy.
Yeah.
That wasn't a matter of, like, people are, that wasn't like civil order.
Mm-hmm.
That was just a matter of public policy. We believe there should be integration. You don't, but we've got the guns and we're going to use them on you if you.
Right. What is absolutely correct on Trump's part, just so I don't sound like an apologist for Newsom, who's a nuisance, but California cannot obstruct the operation of ICE and federal agents. At the same time, they do not have to aid them. You do not have to do that, right? When the federal government has, a law, the federal executive has to execute it.
Yeah.
If it were the case that the states had to execute federal law, then why do you have a federal government, right? The federal government has to be able to provide for the execution of its legal, policies.
Well, So
California can't obstruct, but they do not have to aid.
Yeah. Well, so now the matter of, like, civil order.
Yeah.
You cannot allow. So there are certain laws. I mean, federal laws. The states. The states are part of this country. They are not sovereign little nations unto themselves.
Right.
So, there's certain civil order. We cannot have. If people are going to be attacking each other, if they're going to be burning down cities, and the state government refuses to do something about it, the federal government has to. So. It's unfortunate that it gets to this situation because ordinarily, why would you want riots in your streets? Why would you want people burning your city to the ground?
Yeah, well.
And, this becomes a national interest. There are federal laws being broken here. You refuse to actually enforce them. So we got to come in. We got to do this the hard way.
Yeah. Well, why would you want riots in your streets? On one of the very few occasions where I will agree with Comrade Stalin, never let a good crisis go to waste. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
If you're a political entrepreneur, crisis is beneficial for you. You can spin it however you want. Your voters are ignorant of, the actual causes of whatever's happening, so you can blame it on Trump.
Yeah.
That's good for you.
Well, and I've brought this up before. I know this is probably a bit over people's heads, but, like, when you look at this country as, like, strategic issues affecting this country. California, I mean, those are all our ports, on the West Coast. That is, first of all, incredibly important for the entire country's trade. So when things are happening in Los Angeles, you are interfering with, the entire country's economy.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, that is the back door to the U.S.
Yeah.
So that is a security concern. So, like, California, you cannot allow California to go rogue. Mm-hmm. So at some point, and, like, Gavin Newsom, he's really pushing the limits. But I mean, like, at the end of the day, you cannot have a rogue government that refuses to, acknowledge the authority of the federal government, that, is going to do its own thing. It's going to actually actively defy the federal government.
Yeah.
You can't have, that being your border.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, so Newsom, in this regard, is violating the Constitution. So Article 1, Section 8, Section 10, I sometimes get them mixed up. Section 8 outlines the authority of Congress, right? What it can, make laws. What its laws can pertain to in Article 10, Section 10, the powers denied to the states. Well, Article 8 is very clear in that national security, having a border, right, is a lawful purpose for the federal government.
Yeah.
And in those things, the states individually cannot interfere with those because they are constitutionally, provided powers for the federal government. So yeah, Evers, Newsom here is very much acting illegally.
Yeah, and I mean, so I mean, like, right now, I know there's going to be debate. What exactly is this? It's not legally defined. Oh, it's just a peaceful protest. No, it's a full-fledged invasion. Wherever it is, your city is under attack by people waving foreign flags, and you refuse to do something about it. That's a national issue. You send in the military. Yeah. You don't get to you don't get to have a governor on a border state say no. We want the Chinese army setting up bases in our state, or we want the Mexican army here. You don't have that authority. And if you're going to try to enable that, and you're going to allow that to happen, the federal government's going to come in and they're going to start calling the shots in your state. So
yeah.
So yeah, I mean they're taking us over to the edge. And then and we've talked about this before. I've got I love late 19th century Wisconsin history. Most middle-aged men like World War II. I've got my quirks, I guess. Maybe I'm a little autistic. But yeah,
it's a spectrum, Bill. We're all on it.
We're all on the every guy's on the spectrum. So this is a quote I came across a little while ago, and it was really pertinent to this discussion. This is Frank A. Flower. We used to have a Bureau of Labor, a state-level Bureau of Labor Statistics. Frank A. Flower was the commissioner in 1886 in the 1880s. He was a former investigative journalist. So when you read his
a little kinship there.
Little kinship, and I would say he was a pioneer data journalist because when you read these reports, he really goes in, he knows the types of facts and figures that people really need to understand a story. But yeah, so we had some communist riots that happened in the mid 1880s. And his comment, and there was, obviously, even back then, criticism. Oh, how dare you use the National Guard to put down what is essentially an insurrection, general strikes, trying to burn down the cities. Yeah. So this was his assessment. A mob, a riot is not lawful. It is unlawful. To permit it to run at will is not lawful. It is unlawful. However unpleasant it may be to use military force to suppress a mob, it is the way it is done under the laws of every civilized country on the face of the globe. They that take the sword shall perish by the sword. Just great quote. Just so succinctly, explains, his position on that, what should be the position of every reasonable civilized person, and got a lot of excitement online. I think a few hundred people have shared this and liked it. So probably nobody's really talked about Frank A. Flower for 150 years. So
yes,
glad to bring him back into the discussion.
Yeah, good find.
Then the other big thing is obviously now the left is planning riots all over the country. Oh shoot, there's 55 I think in Wisconsin. It's not all the ones you'd think either. So this post got a lot of attention on our social media accounts. I went through No King's Day map and I copy and pasted every single city in Wisconsin that they're planning to have one. I think there's 55 here.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of conversations about this online. People kind of a little surprised at where there were some, where there aren't some. So yeah, I mean wherever you go this weekend, you should see a few people out on the street.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, leaving it with that. Yeah, so. Keep an eye out for that while you go about your weekend. I think we're wrapping this up here. You got anything you wanted to throw on the tail end here, Mike?
No, I don't think so.
All right.
I think we did. I think we hit it.
All right. So next week, count on more budget news. We'll follow up on what, if anything, happened with the riots this weekend. Hopefully, you are avoiding them and enjoying your. I think it's going to be a rainy weekend all over Wisconsin. So. Stay inside, watch some TV, catch up on Netflix.
Yeah.
And we'll catch up with you guys next week.
See ya.